I fondly remember making collages in art class, newspaper clippings, ribbons, found objects glued to paper. No two designs were alike. Swap out the collected objects to bright fabrics and exchange the glue for fusible web. Now you can create an art quilt. Two leading art quilters are with me, Frida Anderson and Laura Wazalowski, to inspire us how to create small collage art quilts. We're going to do a workshop. And Frida, in our first episode, we did the designing.
We did strip fusing, and now we're going to add in decorative machine stitches for detail, and we're going to audition borders to finish our design.
And Laura, one of the unique techniques we're going to show in this program is the wrapping around the fabric.
Yes, this is a wrapped binding, and what you're doing is wrapping the front to the back. Inside is batting, of course, but also this really stiff interfacing, so you can get shaped quilts like this. Hangs flat on the wall, and all you really need is a little loop on the back to hang it.
Art Quilts Fusible Collage Workshop, that's what's coming up next on Sewing with Nancy.
Sewing with Nancy, TV's longest airing sewing and quilting program with Nancy Zieman, is made possible by Baby Lock, a complete line of sewing, quilting, and embroidery machines and sergers. Baby Lock, for the love of sewing. Madeira, specializing in embroidery, quilting, and special effect threads, because creativity is never black and white. Koala Studios, fine sewing furniture custom built in America. Clover, makers of sewing, knitting, quilting, and embroidery products for over 25 years. Experience the Clover difference. Amazing Designs and Class A Needles.
To create art quilts with the fusible collage technique, the basic technique is fusing paperback fusible web to beautiful fabrics.
Right, and then once it is cooled, peeling the paper off and using the paper to design on, as well as to refuse little pieces too as we're making our collage.
So if you were with us during the first episode, you know that we save this. Frida and Laura designed on top of this release paper, and this was a portion of the design, and now, as we mentioned, we're going to work with the borders.
Right.
And because you fused the design, you're going to fuse the borders.
I am. So first thing I did was to clean up my design, and for this little example, I decided to use a straight blade to trim it up. But I could use a decorative blade as well.
With a rotary cutter.
With a rotary cutter. And the first thing I'm going to do is add in a 1-inch border, something to brighten it up. And this I've added in log cabin style.
So they were just like 1-inch strips that were cut. Remember, it's fusible. Free to overlap them on the paper and
added a first border. And the second border I've cut out with the fused on the fabric without the paper, and this time I've used a decorative blade. So this is that pinking blade that we love so much. And
you can just add that to your rotary cutter.
Right? And they come in different shapes, so there's a bunch of different ones to choose from, and I could add in one more color. I love blue and green together. And again, I'm assembling this, slightly overlapping my edges, making sure that the first piece touches the second piece, and then when I heat it with my iron, it's going to all fuse together.
Right, so I'm just
giving it a little heat, a little loving tap so that it sticks together. I'm going to eventually steam set the whole design. And then I might just add in one more border. I had leftover stripey units from creating my fields that looked like this.
Now in the first episode, Frida showed us how to cut these strips about 1/2 inch wide, overlap them on the release paper and press, and then you get a new unit.
Right, and it's already got all the fusible on the back, and I've cut it apart and then just slightly overlapped those edges so I link it out and I can create one more border around my edge.
Fun.
Very fun. And the very last thing I'm going to do then is to audition some fabrics for my background. So I will often bring different colored fabrics to my design area and slip this whole unit.
And it would be pressed at this time.
It would. It would all be pressed together. And audition. Do I want it to look like this? If you lift it up one more time. What about if I had this color fabric? What a difference those colors would make in my design.
Really lovely.
And so I audition. I don't necessarily know where I'm going as I'm working. The color often directs me.
It sure does. And
Here's the first one that we made, and it has just been placed on top of a blue fabric. But when I did sister quilts, I decided to add in that beautiful turquoise on the edge. And notice this one I used the wave blade to cut out the background, and then I used the pinking blade to cut out the first.
now these are all raw edges. And
All raw
We're
edges.
going to show you how to do the stitching a little bit later, but
Right.
how beautiful it looks.
And here's just some variety of borders you can use. This one I actually didn't do straight lines, but I did curvy lines. And then finally I added in, these are stripy units that finished off the edge on this little quilt. And then two different decorative edges to finish off this little quilt. So the possibilities are
Yeah.
endless.
And in the workshop book that accompanies this program, Frida shows us how to audition borders so that you can follow along and make a little sample quilt and do it yourself. So this is a great way of adding to your quilt.
Yes.
Start with small, you can go a little bit larger. And what colorful, vibrant ways of framing them and showcasing them.
Correct.
Our next art quilt workshop technique features one of Laura's unique wrap binding techniques. The great design is influenced by the shape as well on the outside, not straight.
No, I like this curvy edge.
I like it too.
Yep.
And you will look at other options. Anything goes.
Anything goes. You could even make circular quilts if you wanted to with this wrapped binding technique.
And we're going to use the fusible release paper, or the release paper from the fusible web, and continue along that genre.
Yes, they're all fused, of course, so all my fabrics are fused. And when I'm designing a quilt that has a wrapped binding, I always make sure that my design has an extra inch around the space, the compositional space, because I need to wrap this fabric around a stiff interfacing and batting as well to make that curvy edge.
You know, during this two-part series, I don't know if you realize this, but we've worked with 8.5 by 11 pieces of fabric. So this
Right.
is 1 inch wider, 1 inch longer.
Yes, that's right. Actually, 2 inches. 2, 1, 2, 1, 2.
How about that?
Okay, so there's my composition. When I'm done with it all, what I want to do is go and get my batting, of course, and this really stiff interfacing like this. This is what's inside the quilt.
It's not pliable. It's about a 1/16 of an inch in diameter, and this happens to be fusible.
Yes,
you
that
can
one
get it
is.
with or without fusible, but get the
That's
fusible.
right. So I'm going to rough cut it about a 1/2 inch smaller than my quilt top.
And I'm not going to give you the dimensions
All
because I
right.
may give them wrong.
That's right. So I'll have you hold that for a second. And when I rough cut this, what I'm going to be doing is then taking off about a 1/2 inch off of each side. So there's my ruler, there's my cutter, and I'm going in and out as I cut so that I can get this curvy edge like that. I'll do that on all 4 sides.
Sure.
Once it's cut, then I'm going to go back and mark where the batting and the interfacing match up. So I can match them later on when I'm done with when I'm ready to put the stuff on the back. So here's my quilt top.
Sure.
And I've gotten my batting, and it's on the back right there, centered on the back. Now I need to steam set the quilt.
On the release paper.
Yes, so I'm going to take my
I'm gonna
iron.
turn it to steam.
Okay. Ooh, it's a good steamer. Once it gets steam set, you always want to steam set it for about 10 seconds
Sure.
in each spot. Once it's steam set, then what you can do is hand stitch just through the batting layer and the top layer. You always have to steam before you stitch this type of quilt. So there's my quilt top.
This is kind of your signature design by adding, or signature element by adding the hand embroidery.
Yeah.
And you can see going through into the other side, beautiful French
Well,
knots and
They're small quilts, so you want
Yeah.
more interest, so the little French knots and straight stitches add more detail to the surface.
like it.
So I'm all steam set, I've done all my hand stitching. Now I go back and I find my stiff interfacing and I match it up, see? And now
see.
I'm going to be wrapping the front to the back. So I'll start at a corner, I'll start up here, and I form sort of a 90-degree angle like that. And I'll do that one, and I'll do this one over here, just a little bit to hold that into place. And then I'm going to fold the edges up like this. Now when I fuse the edge down, Nancy, watch out, because what I really have to do is kind of tug on it.
Sure, you got to make that shape.
I got to match up that
And
curve.
you know, let's turn off the steam
Yeah.
for the first go around.
There we go. So now it's all matched up, and I'll do that to each side. And once all the sides are done, then I take random acts of fusing and I would fill in the back. So I would take some random shapes like that after all the sides are wrapped and just start filling in with my odd little shapes of fused fabrics.
And you'll see that those random acts of fusing on the wrong side. What a fun way to use up your scraps. You know, in the second episode we did a little designing with scraps. Well, here you can have the finishing touch with scraps.
That's right. And if I were smart, I could make this a reversible quilt.
Well, you could do that the next time around. And you added a little hanger.
Little loop to hang it up, yeah,
right.
so it hangs nice and flat on the wall. No rod pocket
And
necessary.
look at this. It doesn't drape. It just is stiff because of the batting, as well as the very craft interfacing. And what a wonderful way of making a mini quilt, an art quilt. It's a great design.
Thank you.
So far throughout this series, we have worked with a lot of fusing, cutting, and designing techniques, but there comes a time when you need to sew. And this is the time. And Frida, when you do the finishing techniques on your quilts, you incorporate color and design all the way to the end.
I do, and I really enjoy machine quilting, so I have added in on these little quilts some of the decorative stitches that come on our machines. We have so many choices to choose from, and utilizing those stitches as well.
And you'll show that you do some changing of widths or lengths.
Right.
You can play with the stitch width, stitch length, and the decorative stitches can be sewn along the edge of the raw edge, or they can be sewn down the middle. And on the Midwest landscape, you can see the feather type stitch along the cut edges.
Yes, I'm going to demo sewing it down the center of the decorative stitch that we cut out using our decorative blade.
And the setup is really pretty simple. It's traditional for a decorative stitch. You're going to use your embroidery foot that will come with your sewing machine. We like to use rayon decorative thread, and then be sure that you put in a new needle. An embroidery needle will work. Size 80 will work just great. And you can use whatever type of thread, all-purpose thread or a rayon thread in the bobbin. The choice is yours.
I use all different kinds of threads when I'm quilting. You know, I put my little quilt together as a quilt sandwich. I have actually fused the little quilt top right to my batting and then added in the backing. So I have a traditional 3-layer sandwich.
But it's not pinned together, it's fused together. Right.
Because when we constructed our quilts, they had fusible on all of them.
Sure.
When I add that, I want to just press right onto my batting to adhere it together. And if I was so inclined, I could put pins in the 4 corners just to hold the 3 layers together.
But it's all fused.
It's all fused, so it just basically is holding the back to it. So I have chosen to put yellow onto the pink strips that make up the field in this little quilt. And I'm just going to go ahead and stitch it with what I call chicken feet. Looks like chicken feet had the decorative stitches, and I can just start my quilting. I like to hold my thread as I'm working down the center of the strip, and make sure that I stay on my strip and just run right down the center. You have a little guide on your foot that helps you do that. One of the toughest parts about this is making sure that you stop at the end, because you're not going to trim this up anymore. So I want to go ahead and stop. And if I have the option of using the thread cutter, I go ahead and use that on my machine.
Just cut the threads, and then you'll start over and just keep on keeping on.
Right, and one of the things I like to do with the decorative stitches is, rather than picking a whole bunch of different stitches, is just to change the width of one particular stitch and maybe make it narrow when I sew it on one section of the field and make it wider when I sew it on a different section of the field, and use different colors on different parts of the quilt.
On this particular design, where we have some of the free-form trees, Frida has chosen down the center to use a utilitarian stitch, and also just a multiple-step zigzag.
Right.
And then within the border, you'll see straight stitch, just wavy around the edge.
Yes.
Now, I love your fused binding technique.
Yes, and that's really easy to do. It's using the decorative blade and taking a piece of fused fabric and cutting it out. And once I have quilted the little quilt, I square it up, and then I apply the fused binding. But before I actually put the fused binding on, Nancy, I make sure that I put a rod on a sleeve on the back of the quilt, so that I have a place to hang it.
So these are just a few of the finishing techniques for art quilts. The last technique in the Fusible Collage Workshop, we'd like to share with you Laura's technique of free motion quilting. You can see the background has been stitched in a variety of shapes and sizes that only Laura has designed and going to just share with us. We're using again the rayon thread. We use a embroidery needle free motion quilting setup so that you're going to choose the free motion foot that comes with your machine. You'll see that on Laura's machine. Or you could use a variety of feet that do not ride next to the fabric, just slightly above, so that you can move the fabric underneath the foot. Set your machine for free motion quilting. You're going to lower the feed dogs. You're going to slightly loosen the top tension, which we have already done, and we're working on the wrap framed or wrap bound quilts. Now, this is a perfect size.
Well, you are limited in size on this technique when you have that stiff interfacing inside,
Right.
Nancy. And maybe you can show them why.
Sure. You only have this width doubled from the bed of the machine to the foot. So if this is about 8.5 to 9 inches wide, maybe 17 inches could be the most you could probably work with
That's
comfortably. But that's what you have made for most of your quilts.
That's
For
right.
this series.
Yeah, I love these little quilts. They're fun to stitch as well. This stuff is really easy to stitch through as well.
And you don't have no shifting because everything has been fused.
That's right, it's all in one spot here. So I have a very limited number of patterns, I have to tell you.
Well, I'm not too worried about it.
Okay, I have the Me, Me, Me. I'll show you
Okay.
that. Curly fries and bananas. But let's start out with the Me, Me, Me pattern. You make an M. It's sort of like drawing with your needle when you're stitching. And free motion work is all about keeping the fabric and the quilt moving as you draw with your stitches, like that. So I've dropped the feed dogs, I'm stitching away. This is my Me, Me, Me pattern. Sure fills up a lot of space.
That's good.
And then once I do a lot of Me, Me, Me patterns, maybe I should try something else. I think right now I'm going to go into curly fries and bananas.
Okay.
A lot of things are food related in my life, and I think curly fries are very appropriate for the name of this. That's a curly fry. And then over here are some bananas, where you just do some little short little curls like that. So that's curly fries and bananas. It's a fun stitch. Shall I show you snails on fire?
Snails on fire, yes.
Snails on fire. And when I'm doing snails on fire, I make the snail. There he is. There's my snail. And then I set him on fire like this. I'm going to make those. This is also known as escargot flambé. So I have a lot of fun with my machine quilting, but I have to tell you, I really am not very imaginative sometimes when it comes to
I
doing
beg
things.
to differ. Escargot flambe, I don't think we've ever shown that or had another guest showing that on Sewing with Nancy.
One thing I should mention is when it's really a great idea to learn this skill, how to do free motion work, because these little art quilts, there's a lot of organic shapes in them, and you have to be able to get in and around those shapes. So if you can
Yes.
take a class like from Frida, she would be an excellent instructor. She would show you how to do this type of stitching, this free motion work. And of course, her advice is always practice, practice, practice. So that's my advice to you as well.
And you have obviously practiced this quite a bit.
Well, enough to get by, let's put it that way.
The beauty of working with having that stiff interfacing, all the fused layers, there isn't any shifting, and oh my, what
Yeah.
character that adds
It
to
holds
your
it
quilt.
really stiff. And you would think it would be difficult to stitch through this stuff, but it stitches like butter, as they say.
It does.
So here I am going around my little bird's head. There he goes.
And so with the flaming fries or the curly fries, you cannot, okay, that's flaming escargot. So,
Flaming cheese.
okay, so you can just get all those shapes.
Uh-huh.
Laura, as you're finishing, I'm just going to show some close-ups on another one of your art quilts, and you can see the
Alrighty.
beauty of the design and how the shapes are incorporated around and among the design. You can see some of the snails. Let's see, this one doesn't seem to have any me-me-me's, but we have a lot of the snail shapes, the curly fry shapes. If we look at this design, you can see some of the snails on fire, and even some non-traditional, just waves through that area. It just really adds to the element of the design. So when you're working with your art quilts, try little small samples as we've used throughout this series. 8.5 by 11 has been kind of the common size. You can step by step go through the processes of making a collage, framing it, and then doing the stitching. One of the great privileges of the Nancy's Corner segment is that I'm able to feature volunteer and charity sewing and quilting organizations. From emails and letters, you've told me that because of these features, many of you have volunteered your time and talents. And I'd like to introduce you to another grassroots charity whose mission is to raise awareness and fund research for Alzheimer's. I'd like you to welcome Beth Hartford. Beth is from the Alzheimer's Art Quilt Initiative and has a great story to tell us. Welcome, Beth.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
You're very welcome. And the Alzheimer's Art Quilt Initiative main function or goal is to raise money for
Exactly.
research, and you have some great ways that you raise the money.
Absolutely. The curator and the founder of this organization began in 2006, Ami Sims. She began the organization because her mother was afflicted with Alzheimer's, and she needed a way to help. She was feeling frustrated and helpless. And so one day she was standing in the shower and it came to her that she wasn't a doctor, she wasn't a researcher, and she didn't know how to cure disease, but she could make a quilt. So she began the Alzheimer's Art Quilt Initiative, and we've been flying ever since then.
And you have two types of quilts you're going to show us today, and one is called the Priority Quilt, and it got its name because it fits into a priority envelope.
Plus, this is a priority in our lives. This needs to be a priority in our lives. And we need quilters. These have been donated by quilters all over the world. We've had over 1,900 quilters donate nearly 6,500 quilts. They are any type, any kind of thing that you want to do. They can be any subject. The only requirement we have is that they fit the 9 by 12 or smaller size requirement for the priority quilts.
Sure. And they're auctioned off every month.
Every month, the first 10 days of the month, there is an auction. There are 26 quilts that are auctioned every month. And you can bid on those. It's called a slow and silent auction. If you go to our website, you can get that information, and you can see all the quilts and bid on them.
And then you can also submit a quilt.
Absolutely. We
quilt.
need quilts. We were just in Houston in the fall, and we needed to sell. We sold over 900 quilts in 5 days. So that depletes our stores, as you can imagine.
Sure.
So we are in the need of quilts at all times. The more the better, and every bit of money that we can squeeze out goes directly to research.
And what's encouraging to know is that some of your research dollars have already been
Absolutely.
Tell us the...
This gives me goosebumps. One of the research studies that we recently funded at the University of Michigan discovered a compound that actually dissolves the amyloid plaque, which is one of the nasties in Alzheimer's. This is one of the things that causes all the problems. So in humans, not in rats, not in mice, but in a human brain, it dissolved the plaque. So we're really excited about that research.
Then we have one example and others hanging to show these long vertical quilts.
Right. These quilts are 6 inches wide, Nancy, by 7 feet long.
They're called Heartbreak to Hope.
This is the exhibit that's traveling the country right now. It's called Alzheimer's Heartbreak to Hope. Each one of these names is someone who's been affected by Alzheimer's. These were quilted by quilters all over the country, well-known quilters, Laura Wazalowski, Frida Anderson, Alex Anderson.
Sure.
Many people have quilted these quilts, and they're beautifully done, and they will all hang together in an exhibit.
182 of them with 55 names each, 10,000
over 10,000
names, and to draw awareness to this disease and how people can contribute to that.
Right.
Well, thank you for being our guest. It's encouraging to know what we can do as quilters and sewers to help fund research.
Oh, any help It would be appreciated. Thank you.
And you can find more information about this organization by going online to nancyzeman.com, where you'll find Sewing with Nancy and the Nancy's Corner information, and click on that, and you can find information on the Alzheimer's Art Quilt Initiative. And you'll also find programs that you can watch, streaming video online, so I hope that you go there. We'd like to thank Frida Anderson and Laura Wazalowski, as well as Beth, for being our guests during this series, the Art Quilts, the Fusible Collage Quilt series. Thanks for joining us. Bye for now.
Nancy, Frida, and Laura's fully illustrated art quilts fusible collage workshop workbook includes laminated instructions for all the techniques featured in this two-part series. It's $19.99 plus shipping and handling. To order the book, call 800-336-8373 or visit our website at sewingwithnancy.com/2504. Order item number BK2504, Art Quilts, Fusible Collage Workshop. Credit card orders only. To pay by check or money order, call the number on the screen for details. Visit Nancy's website at nancyzeman.com to see additional episodes, Nancy's blog, and more. Sewing with Nancy, TV's longest-airing sewing and quilting program with Nancy Zeman, has been brought to you by Baby Lock, Madeira Threads, Koala Studios, Clover, Amazing Designs, and Class A Needles. Closed captioning funding provided by Rowenta. Sewing with Nancy is a co-production of Nancy Zeman Productions and Wisconsin Public Television.